All right, so this is Raw Automation Talk. I'm here with Johnny Jones and also our special guest here with Peter Tikhonov. Peter works with me as a president. I'm the CEO of Agile Automation. Today we're going to be talking about OEE. So let's go and talk about what we're going to talk about in this presentation. We're going to talk about the birth of OEE, the three common types of OEE solutions, the four typical OEE users, and the six common OEE issues. So let's go into talking about ourselves real quick. Peter, you're the president of Agile. I would describe you as a solutions architect, a full stack solution provider. I'd probably say that your strengths are going to be like networking, architecture, database design, UI. Anything else you'd like to add to that?
Pretty much the entire thing.
Yeah.
Well,
Johnny,
database
what?
and architecture is just a
Yeah.
part of it. Like you said, full stack, it means integration. So,
Yeah.
all right. Now
Johnny,
you guys.
you're the owner of Indusol. I've worked with you in the past. You've taken on a lot of automation, small automation projects. You're mostly kind of a higher class Cadillac panel shop. You've done a lot of oil and gas type projects. Anything that you're famous for, or did I capture that right?
You got it right.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on. This is kind of a disclaimer. So I kind of want this meeting to be kind of open. So it's going to be a little bit different. Just imagine it, all three of us are just at a fire pit drinking a beer. So most of our opinions are going to be potentially unprofessional. And our opinions are going to be based on our experiences, which might differ from somebody else, but we're not against changing our minds. So all right. So the first thing is that once a plant is automated, this is the third generation of automation. The process is already automated, and now what needs to happen is we need to start collecting and analyzing some of the data on that production floor. So today's OEE discussion is going to be trying to solve the problems for these four different users, which is the corporate managers, maintenance, and operators. So each one needs a unique type of solution and different tools to analyze. So let's go through it. So I actually need to stop and actually start from the very beginning of what OEE is, because essentially some people might be watching this and not know anything about it. So let's talk about that really quick. Here you have your general ISA 95 part 1, where everything at the very bottom starts with sensors and field IO. It then moves up to PLCs and then goes up to the next layer, which is SCADA, then the MES, which is what we're going to be talking about. Then it will scale up to the ERP and then the cloud. So our focus today will be just on the MES. And of course, this is one of those stacks that seems to be the most difficult that manufacturing plants are having the most difficult with. So inside of MES has different features. Today's focus is only going to be on the one on the very bottom, which is the performance analysis. This is going to be the OEE. So other discussions about MES we'll have to do in a later video. So this mostly is a discussion about trade-offs. So lots of different ways we can actually go about solving this OEE. And whether it's a digital thread or a UNS type architecture, whether it's even worth actually looking into an MES or an OEE solution, buying or building, or the type of people who want 150 different reason codes for an OEE solution. So there's the trade-offs are going to be whether it's initial cost or ongoing costs, commissioning speed for scaling, whether you want flexibility, whether you accept and can handle human intervention, or whether you need all that data to be automatic, and then whether you want an open or closed architecture. So we'll be going through all this. So this graph, and some people are going to be making a couple of arguments towards what it looks like, but the farther you go towards the right, the more truth you'll get to. Cost is always a factor. So the very first on the left category, the very basic, you're into that type of solution, very cheap, affordable. But the problem is that it's going to be only producing about 10% of automatic data versus the 90% subjective human intervention. So although it's cheap, it won't produce the truth that you're really actually interested in. And some people might actually take this as a solution just to get started. So this is where some people have already started, and then as they go into other different features or other different solutions, they can get closer towards the truth. The second one is what the very typical standard MES solution that we've seen on the production floor. It's, to me, it seems like it's the most expensive, and we'll go into that. A lot of times it's a cloud solution. A lot of times it's a digital thread, which is a data silo where they hold and store all the data and don't allow anybody else to have access to that. It will have an alarm analysis, but it won't do anything with root fault analysis. So we'll go into that a little bit later. This possibly could have scheduling. It could have ERP integration. And this is where most solutions have the most salespeople. So we'll go into this a little bit later in the slides. The last one on the very right, which is the solution that we would recommend, mostly an automatic data capturing collection. You would get the root fault analysis, and when it's ready, you could do scheduling and ERP integration into it. All right, before we get started, we kind of have to talk about this. Obviously, on the left-hand side, you've got unique PLCs with all different unique programs or snowflakes that were generated by different contractors, sometimes the cheapest contractor. So all of this data and all these different control processes were all unique. That then goes into the middle section where it's the formatting, the data format. This is, to me, this is where you can massage the data to clean it, organize it, contextualize it. And then you've got on the right-hand side the standard OEE engine. This should be kind of packaged in almost a product, so it shouldn't change. It shouldn't be unique. It should be a standard interface to accept a standard interface. This should be something that doesn't need to change per the environment. So it should be a standard application that you can just drop in. All right, so another thing before we start, we want to kind of talk about this. I posted something up on LinkedIn a few weeks ago about this, but this is where most plants start, and that's perfectly acceptable if you want to start getting into it. But they'll start with a whiteboard or an Excel sheet. They'll start capturing it and realizing that it's consuming too much labor to actually come up and produce some of these numbers. You'll find out that the numbers are being manipulated. You'll find out that it's not real time, and you'll find out that you're spending your whole day trying to update these spreadsheets. So this is a great start. It's fairly easy to get into, but it doesn't scale. So we're going to talk about 3 different types of OEE solutions: the too far from the process, approaching the process, and part of the process. So we're going to start with the first one, too far from the process. So what that looks like is, if you can see on the left-hand side, is that you plug into an equipment, you grab that data. You could either go from 250 feet all the way to several thousand feet, but you'll see that corporate is seeing some data, but it's not, these two are so far separated from each other that they don't necessarily communicate. They don't necessarily get to see. The operator doesn't get to see what is going on or what he needs to improve upon. And the corporate is only getting data that it receives, and it has no idea about the accuracy of it. So honestly, corporate is probably getting bad data, and so even they don't even know what to do with this. So it's just what I would consider something to where it's a very, very short-term solution. It doesn't provide a whole lot of value. And most of the times what happens is that the operator is actually manually entering reason codes, which, and I'll go into this a little bit later, but when they manually enter reason codes at the end of, let's just say at the end of the shift.
Well, let's throw the name. That would be a red zone,
Yeah,
right?
we'll go into that. Yeah, actually, Peter, here, I'll go into that in a second.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're talking, go ahead. If you can top off the top of your head, what would you say?
No,
The
no,
red
it's
zone?
fine. Well,
Yeah,
remember, we kind of dissected just recently. Uh, like their appeal was that they kind of push the idea of people being on a social network, and they want to apply kind of the similar rule to allow them to work together in some sort of social network with respect to the production environment, the manufacturing, where they can just cooperatively solve those problems and help each other,
right.
and be all happy. Well, I would say, I'm sorry, I doubt that the people who don't probably want to see each other too much, and on top of that, whole politics,
Right.
would enjoy any kind of that kind of experience. I mean,
Right.
it just basically puts them even further into this hell. Let's call it
Right.
this way.
Right.
Well,
So here's
yeah,
another.
there's nothing to expect. They're simply not going to do it. Yeah, to you, Brent.
Yeah. So Peter, we've seen this solution. So imagine the black box, right? And it doesn't matter which company it is. It seems like they all use this type of scenario. So on the equipment itself, you'll get a feed counter and then an exit or an out feed counter.
Yeah, you got in feed, out feed, and it's basically counters that are just doing like what comes in, what comes out. I think sometimes they even just do the what comes out of it. They don't even need to see what comes in.
Yeah, well,
So
what's
yeah.
nice about coming in is then you can subtract it for the quality. So
Look, yeah, I understand the difference,
yeah.
but that gets to the point where you start talking about the bill of material, the engineering bill of material, and maybe 5 things comes in, 1 thing comes out, etc. Or you have, I can name you a case when 1 thing comes in and 5 things comes out. Well, then what?
Right.
Then how
Right.
we apply in this case? So therefore, it's typically something like counting at the machine output or station output, and they know the part number. It would be a good, or they scan a part number or something like this. Now, the interpretation of the downtime would be something similar to, oh, I'm not seeing any production count increasing. Therefore, after a certain time, I would consider that this is a downtime. What downtime? Is it start block? I even doubt that the start and block like you show here is going to be a subject. It's just simply running, not running. And if it's running, what's the rate? Okay.
Right. Yeah. And some of them provide the start and block, and some of them don't. Yeah.
Maybe it's not maybe it's a manual inputs optionally.
Right. Here's what well, at least what we've seen at Peter and I worked at another plant together at this one, but the very top is the reason code scanner, which was the worst thing we saw. Which was what would happen is that the machine would go down. The operator would then scan that the reason was because of maintenance, and then maintenance would scoot their tool cabinet nearby, and the very first thing the maintenance would do is scan in that there was an operator error, right? And so up on the clients, you would see on the website that they would host, you would see this maintenance and an operator, and they would be essentially just fighting over the reason code scanner, scanning. Every time they go around the block, they would scan. It's a blame game, is really what it was, and it produced a lot of bad data. Is what the end result.
We saw it's called what, Logix, the product called Logix.
Yeah, that was called
Plant
Shop
Logic. Shop Logix. Yeah,
Shop Logix. Yep. Yeah, but Shop Logix wasn't the only one. There's also, if you go on OEE.com, you can also find some displays that plug into a reason code scanner. So they're not the only ones. Nope.
So okay, these are the categories where they typically come in. They will provide their own type of hardware, like a readers or something, and they completely independent of the automation layer. So in other words, there's no integration. So this is like a standalone.
Yeah, the perk to it is that it scales out. So if you wanted to do 30 pieces of machine, It obviously just throw these little black boxes everywhere and give everybody some training, and within no time you've got some data. The bad part about it is that the data's, like we said, 90% of the
Yeah.
data is
It's a
potentially
rate.
off.
It's a running, not running, and rate and manual reason codes, which are very subjective or very
Right,
questionable. Now,
right,
availability, there is no even question about availability. You might get some kind of performance out of it. Quality, of course, out of the question, unless you have inline quality counter or something like this that might be applicable. But again, completely obscured.
yep. And
Data
we'll go.
or information that they provide is totally obscure. The only thing you can derive from it, whether things are running, not running, and what's your production rate. Nothing further.
Yeah. And what we saw is that sometimes these black boxes were fairly inexpensive. Sometimes they were a lot more expensive. In this case, each line was like $11,000 for the hardware, and then it was a subscription based for how much data you used. So it can
No,
quickly.
you're referring to the other system.
Yeah, yeah. It
So
depends on
okay.
which system. So the prices are all over the place. But yeah, it's and we'll go into more of this here in a little bit. So let's go ahead and so yeah, yet again, let's talk about this. At the end of the shift, there's some solutions that want you to type in what reason codes were all the down what were all the reason codes for all the downtime. And again, if you're talking about an operator who's just trying to leave on a Friday afternoon, I
Well,
assure
Brent,
you.
I'm sorry, Brent, I have to intervene here. It's not even talking about living or not living. Nobody's
Yeah.
going to remember the reason. It's number one by the end of the day, especially for the operator. Number two,
Now,
the only chance that you have to enter something reasonable or something that it reflects the objective truth or somewhat objective truth of the operator that something happened is at the moment when that thing happened. Guess what? Operator is going to be worried about one thing only: how to get the whole thing going back and running. They don't even care about this entry or something or statistics. They need to get it back and going. That's how they see their responsibility. Now,
right.
somebody throw responsibility on top of them and say, no, wait a minute, before you even start fixing the issue and get your production, because they're not gonna get screwed for not putting the appropriate data right on the spot. They're going to get screwed not to get things quickly enough going back into production. So therefore, remembering anything, when it happened, how long it took to resolve, what was the actual fault, out of the question. It's like,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Let me just punch some numbers on that reason codes, and I'm off.
Right, right. It's kind of like asking a fireman that has a house on fire, to fill out a form before he goes in.
Yes, precisely. Like, let's do
Right.
some inspection before figuring out how which category fire we need to put, what was precisely is going on, how it probably happened. Yeah, do like some analysis. Of course, they
Right.
do the analysis, but they do analysis without any report. All of this done after the fact. All
Yeah.
these paperwork. So same thing here. Operator, nearly the same as a fireman
Right.
in this case scenario. All they need to get it back and going. That's the only thing that they will think of.
Yep. All right. So say if that's the case, there's going to be at some point in time a report. And if you start looking at this report and you start really analyzing a certain line and you start realizing that it's not truthful, then this is worthless. This report is worthless because it's got too much human input or intervention. So why even produce it is our problem. All right, the only time where I could see this actually being put in place is for machines that actually don't have a PLC. So you're not going to get a whole lot of data out of it. You're not going to get an accurate, correct OEE solution out of it, but you can get the performance, the uptime, the downtime, how much is just actually processed. But this is a perfect application for it because you're not necessarily trying to
Yeah,
capture
yeah,
all
high
the.
volume or somewhat high. Well, that should be very repetitive.
Right.
It's like a
All right. Now,
a lot of manual, and it should be repetitive.
yep. So all right. So now we've actually fallen into the second category, which is the standard typical solution. This is what we see all the time. There's different variations, and we can kind of talk about some of the, at least a few of them. But it's what I call an OEE IT special. So this normally is a cloud type solution. So the concept is that they could go onto the production floor, connect and pull up all this data into the cloud. And let's talk about a little bit of it. And if you can see up on the top right hand side, obviously the price has gone up. And again, it depends on whether was there a cost associated with the initial hardware, and then most of these cloud types of solutions have a subscription based. They could be subscription as far as per month, or they can be something to where it depends on how much data that you consume, and they can just charge you on the data. All right, so, and again, here's a list of Ampere, Plex, and Peter, you might not know this, but Rockwell Automation purchased another piece of software called Plex System.
Yeah,
so that's,
I know that. No,
yeah,
Plex actually SAP online in a way.
got it. So then there's the red zone that we talked about. There's SAP DMC. Now it's just SAP DM. Then you got the Shop Logic, Versacol, Verona. There's a bunch. There's got to be at least 500 out there, and they're all screaming to be the number one and solution provider. But these are solutions that, again, can scale fairly fast, but still have a ultimate flaw into the design of it.
No, let's say these type of solutions, they do have integration to the automation layer. So they have some way of talking to the controllers.
Right.
And typically it's OPC.
UA. Yeah.
Well, I would say DA is probably there, not to mention UA.
Yeah, on some of the older plants. So because they have some of the connections to the PLC, we actually have it right there. 25 to 60% of the data is now automatic. They still only have alarm analysis, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but they do not have root fault analysis, and we'll be able to talk about that.
They have a very okay, before they can even get anything, they have to learn about the process a little bit and trying to figure it out. So in other words, if previous solution does not require a control engineer, here you have to have a control engineer who is somewhat familiar with the process, and they will tell you which bits or which signals called tags they need to hook up in order to satisfy. But they're already coming with some sort of connector and saying, hey, I need to know what this signal in the controller or that signal. They're trying to already push some kind of requirements to connect.
Right.
They have interface. So you're not saying it, you're not showing interface, but there's interface there, that something that is going to interpret supposedly machine or production line or whatever cell behavior.
Right. And Peter, we've done this before, to where what they do is they provide us a list of all the tags that they want. We would then share this.
Not exactly. No, we got it. Like in one case that you're referring to, somebody actually did look at the code, tell them what is probably available, and then they come back and they say, hey, this is what we want out of the code. It means
Right.
you have some knowledge, you have some study done before they can even be connected.
Yeah.
So
and our biggest problem is only until after a few months do they realize that the tags that they picked don't have the logic that they really wanted.
So in other words, what it means, they are push on to production floor their standard requirements in terms of state, machine state, alarms, something, but it's a very, very vague. It's like you may connect it one way, you may connect it another way. They will get the data, then it most likely will become somewhat conflicting. In other words, it's not standardized. Although they claim it might be standardized, they're always like saying, "Hey, I'll just connect a couple of tags here and there. We know we need this and state these states from the machine, and you magically got it all, working and providing the statistics." Well, the answer is no, because then the next thing is they begin to figure out that something is connected wrong. it's not properly collecting data, they're not mutually exclusive, etc. So it's overlapping, and it always get back to the production floor anyway, not giving us the appropriate data. Well,
Right.
the
So-
answer is because
Well,
short on resources, etc. Nobody wants them to kind of push into this domain because, look, you
Well-
can't report the same way, consider the complexity and consider the variety of automation systems and machines on the production floor. They literally cannot deliver it's all in that standard required connector, call it.
Right,
Connector
because they
which-
do not, the one thing that they do not want to do is have, a typical plant will have several different PLCs, and they do not want to have all those different versions of development software and really plug it. They just want the tags, and so it's difficult for them. The perk to them, though, is that they have, some of them have scheduling options and ERP integration, but those are all,
yeah.
you know,
But again, here where the absolutely good study of automation program, automation layer, and the PLC and what program is runs there, and the process itself is imperative to the success of this project. Of course, the cloud guys are like they don't want to do anything about this.
right.
They don't want to do anything. All these dotted lines. I mean, they're dotted lines, but try to get there.
Right.
Try to get
Yeah.
them right. I mean, we can get the cloud, we can get the rest of it. I mean, they can get it because it's all cookie cutters. But
Right.
on the production floor, you can't get it cookie cutters because it's going to be a zoo. Well,
Yeah,
welcome to the zoo.
Yeah, let's talk about, let's talk about
there's
it.
the zoo.
Yeah. So obviously you can tell on the left-hand side that the PLC data is just a mess, right? So different contractors built that, the logic, built different, I mean, no one has a great nomenclature for what the running bit is. They all mean different things. So the theory behind it is that they take, you know, lots of unorganized data and then clean that up. You can see it kind of like in the Legos in different categories of different colors. And then the goal would then be is to shove that type of data into a dashboard, a website, and then broadcast it to corporate. Usually they're only trying to build a solution for some odd reason only for corporate to see, maybe even supervisors, but a lot of the solutions that we've seen don't hit the operators. So the operators are still kind of clueless on what's going on. They don't get to see the improvements
Well,
that
at
they
least
need to
we
make.
have to give them a credit. They're trying to reach out to
Right.
the zoo and trying to figure out what's going on there.
Right.
It's just kind of general idea how much meat comes in, how much poo comes out. If we're speaking in terms of, let's say, carnivores.
So
How many
my
visitors comes through?
yeah. So Peter, my biggest
No.
problem is
Yeah,
Is
sorry,
it-
I have to. It's the ratio between shit, meat, and visitors.
So Peter, my biggest problem is the fact that once you take some of this data, you've burned through, I don't know whether it's 200,000, whether it's $500,000, you've cleaned it and contextualized the data, and you don't really actually know whether you've got it done it the right way. So there's speculations on how fast they went through and moved through the plant,
Yep.
but there is no.
So
seems
yeah,
like-
you're absolutely right. So they saying, all right, now we got all that mass, all that zoo coming at us, all that noises that the zoo produces. Let's
Right.
try to make sense out of it. So they put some, I don't know, wizard who is trying to apply certain rules and saying, hey, now this is how we're going to interpret this. Well, guess what? Again, you have exceptions on top of exceptions on top of exceptions because the zoo is zoo. You have to know the process. You have to be like at least a little bit familiar with the machine and how machine operates and what kind of signals it's capable of, what kind of signals it's not capable of, or
Right.
some that general attempt to interpret the data the noise, the zoo noise that comes in, and the higher tiers, it will not. It's not going to be successful. It will be successful if you have no zoo, if you have the same machines over and over, or if you have a preferred supplier who you told specifically before they even ship production equipment to you to have that certain type of interface to collect the performance data to, like, I don't know, let's start calling it already at this point OEE driver, OEE connector, let's call it
Right.
this way.
Yeah. But
Well,
Peter,
but
you
where
look, you've been doing, you've been doing automation for how long? When was the
yeah,
last time you've seen?
look, I've seen, the plant in
Yeah. Can't list.
what was that? The fans. Remember, they make
Yeah.
those
Yeah. Yeah.
water fans. They have OEE integrated, but that's the builder who probably finally got tired of it. They just put it all in PLC. Guess what? They done it in the PLC. They put it in by default and they sell it with this thing. You want to use it, use it. You don't want to use it, it's up to you.
Yeah.
By the way,
meanwhile,
those pictures with the if you go a couple slides back, that's where it come from. Right there. See that? See this? That's lower bottom left corner.
Right.
That's exactly from there.
Yep. Yeah, but Peter, that was one piece of the equipment, one line. So
Yeah.
the issue is that the rest of the plant had
Exactly.
nothing.
Well, it was given for free. It was not even part of the plant requirements. It was given for free by the machine builder.
Yep.
The machine builder gives it. There's no integration, nothing. It's all done in PLC.
Right.
We're not even talking about some databases here, some clouds, etc. So it's all done in PLC.
Right. All right. So my biggest problem with the cloud solutions, Peter and Johnny, is the fact that once they clean it, they are not a node in an ecosystem. So they consume data, they don't produce the data. So there's a lot of time that's spent, whether it's 200,000, whether it's $500,000. They burn through a lot of hours and labor hours, but none of it is provided to the UNS, where you can actually use different pieces of software to find the solution.
You're showing here there's no UNS. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, correct. So what you've got is a vendor lock-in. What you've got is a data silo. So again, it's only a consumer, not a producer.
No,
so,
call it big data silo.
Right. Yeah, correct. So it's like this. It's under the assumption that one piece of software is going to be the only solution that you only need. So you don't need any other piece of software. So I mean, here we're big fans of Ignition, but I wouldn't want to make Ignition do a CMMS type of software. There's other software out there that do a great job with CMMS that's already done, already built, already can be connected to it. Can you build it with Ignition? And the answer is yes, but should you? And the answer is no. So there's just, what I'm getting at is that there's a lot of different pieces of software out there that solve a set of problems that are already done, already built, that people already know how to solve problems with them. So what they're trying to do is grandfather people into a locked-in solution. And ideally, you only get to know that there's limitations in that OEE IT special when you're already deep into it, when you're already 70 and 80% all the way there, and you realize that there's several things that it key lacks. So anyway.
Yeah, and how that whole thing is typically happens, they sell the software and then they begin to figure out how we going to integrate the software.
Yeah, correct. And then that's when it becomes technical debt, because it doesn't solve the problem, all the problems, and goes from there. All right. So, I mean, on a fundamental level, over on the left-hand side, you got an ERP, MES type of programmer. This programmer has not worn a lot of, I know this is going to sound funny, but my first question to them would be, have you worn earplugs for years? And if the answer is no, then they're obviously in
You mean you're referring to the ERP MES?
Yeah. Basically what I'm saying is that they don't spend a lot of
Agreed.
time down on the
Now,
production
if
floor.
you have a PLC programmer who evolved into ERP MES programmer, then you have a success
Right.
because you have the guy who actually survived the field.
Right.
So you can't do it opposite way. I don't know. Maybe there are exceptions, but I like most of us here is basically coming from the floor
The bottom up.
up.
Right.
Yeah, bottom up. Well, yeah, from production floor up. But you will never see. I don't know. I haven't not seen anyone who actually going from up down.
Right. So on a fundamental thing, on the fundamentals of how you can execute an OEE project, do you start with the ERP MES type of programmer that's $250 an hour, or do you start with an OT programmer that's on the production floor that knows the
No,
process?
answer is
$100
neither.
an hour?
Well,
Yeah.
you would need absolutely PLC, but you start neither with those are. As soon as you start saying word program, it means you already have project in place going, and that's where you have these should be resources. But yeah, absolutely, the guy on the left is not going to be. Well, let's say the resource on the left is not going to be anywhere close in their experience to the resource on the right. Completely different background, typically.
Yep.
Completely
All right.
different objectives, completely different instruments, tools, different world, etc., etc. Yeah,
All right.
they don't mix. Let's put it this way.
Right. All right, so then we're going to go into the third process, right? So it's part of the process is this solution. So basically what you have is you're embedding an OEE driver and a root fault driver into the PLC or into the equipment. And so that is then thrown and provides a standard user interface into your OEE engine. You can see up on the top right-hand side, this is, I would define this as a cheaper solution, mostly because there's no subscription-based, mostly because it doesn't, this is the OEE engine would sit there in on-premise. So no subscription. The hardware is already there because naturally you need a SCADA system anyway. So it kind of blends in. So let's go into what this would look like. So essentially what you're going to do is have an OT programmer throw in the two drivers onto the edge where he actually goes into the program, throws those in, makes the connections.
Well, edge, don't call it edge equipment on edge automation system.
Okay.
System that controls the process, a process control system, process or a controller, literally. So what the PLC programmer does, PLC programmer looks at the process, looks at the program, kind of get general idea of what's going on. It does not have to be typically it's not the one who wrote the original program for the equipment. Adds those pieces of software. Now on the integration side, the side that feeds the OEE engine, they're all the same regardless of the machine. And on the equipment side, on the controller side, this is where the study is done, and this is where that driver, that piece of software that runs along with the process. In other words, it's within the same time domain. So because what's the problem there? Well, yeah, you didn't mention the problem there. You have network latency. If your process is slow, okay, fine. But what if your process is too fast? Then your latency on the network is becoming a huge variable because you don't know which things are happening.
Yeah, actually, Peter, we'll talk about that here in a second. Yeah. Here, let's go through it.
There you go. So that's becoming part of the actual control program at that driver that interfaces directly with the process and extract and interprets the events from the process to provide absolutely reliable, the ultimate truth about the process with the, of course, from a specific perspective, the subject of your interest. You see there's certain things, they happen, the sequence and what they happen. That gives you ultimate truth about the process when you're looking with that from that particular perspective and that process.
Yep.
Now the rest of it is no interest because then at this point you can use any system and that will typically succeed. So answer it very simple. You want to succeed, take your money, take the resources from the higher tiers, move them to the lower tiers, study the process, integrate specifically to the process. You'll get the standard output, normalized output. You're done. You can pick the cheapest software out there. They will succeed with this because it's easy to process a standard freaking thing which looks the same, sound the same color, do the same blinking, do the same dancing, everything is the same.
Yep.
So yeah,
Fair.
that's where we're getting.
All right, so let's go into the we'll skip into the next chapter here. So it's the 4 typical OEE users, and again, they're going to be the corporate supervisors, maintenance, and the operators themselves. So let's talk about corporate real quick. The big problem or the solution that they want or the answers that they want are they're mostly trying to figure out capacity. So what is the capacity? Are they running the plants running at capacity or not? Can they run more? And so let's go into, I'm going to go ahead and scroll over to our matrix. Give me 1 second. All right. So capacity, let's go real quick. So this is the metrics. This is an OEE solution using ignition. We'll go into a little bit more of the details a little bit later, but let's just go.
Ignition with the OEE driver on the controller.
So say you're corporate and you want to know capacity. So essentially what you're going to do is going to go over to the historian, going to go over to the OEE aggregation. So say if the problem is that corporate wants to know whether they can get in or eliminate the 4th shift, which is going to be the Sunday and the Saturday, and they want to know whether they can actually meet the production that they're wanting without the 4th shift. So what I can do is I can highlight all 4 shifts. I can choose the whole month, and then when I get the data, it'll capture what I've been able to produce in the last month. And so if I wanted to do that without the 4th shift, you can see that it gets reduced. So does this meet capacity? Will I still meet production and orders if I eliminate the 4th shift? So that answers that problem. So anyway, all right, so then I'm going to go back. So the next is going to be supervisors. Their big deal is that do their operators need training? Is there one operator that outperforms the other one? So we're going to go back to the metrics and we'll show you. There's actually a couple of things that we can show you. So one is that it's this screen right here. This is the live screen. They've got 4 different sections out of this. You get your typical standard OEE, where you can actually start realizing if there's going to be an issue, and it separates into the 3 different groups. But you also have the states, the different states, and of course they'll become active if any time's actually thrown into those different states. And then you've got the trend.
Friend, we're getting into the states without even talking about what are those states, where they come from.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway.
Yeah. Well.
Why? What's the difference between production and, let's say, changeover and production and starved and idle? How you even figure it out?
Right.
What are those?
We'll get into the really details a little bit later. But yeah, we're gonna just be as if we know this piece of software, and we just we're gonna run through this real quick, and then we'll talk about the details later. So this will give you the trend of how that that run or that production or that shift is doing. We even give you the predictive schedule. I'm sorry, the production of what it's going to run at the end of that shift. So even the operator could be able to see like what they're going to end at. You can see down below that they didn't meet their targets on these hours, but it turns green if they did meet or exceeded their target rate. And then, by the way, you can actually if you had the administration rights, you can actually readjust these per hour. So you might have actual times where you're taking a break, so
Yeah.
you can.
Well, let me just throw a couple cents here. You can control targets either based on the part or product that this machine is producing, or you can set them specifically for every hour. So it could be mix and match, take your pick. But
Yeah.
hours are target hour. I'm sorry. Each hour may have its own target based on a different logic.
Right. Okay.
So
And
units, how many units per minute? So we have a rate.
yep. And this is kind of the I don't know, a real good diagram that kind of shows exactly what the
That general
supervisor.
idea how that
Yeah.
whole thing
So
is
you've got
going.
downtime, but you want to know if you were starting to have the same type of downtime, or you could be running, but it could be just not at the same target rate. So in
And
general,
yeah, what is so interesting about this graph? It's missing one thing. It does not have schedule.
right,
In other words, when you're looking here, you're assuming that the entire shift is scheduled for production. There's nothing there that says, hey, out of the, let's say, if it's 8-hour shift, we expecting it to run only, let's say, 7 hours, because 1 hour is going to be expected downtime. I don't know, call it because it's a contractual, because according to the contract, they have a 1 hour, downtime, where you typically don't see it, but I would say I see it a lot. So expectation versus reality. So expectation is one, reality is different, and how much you can actually claim downtime, which was expected downtime. So now here's the key word. You have running, not running. If it's running, good, assuming that it's supposed to run. And if it's not running, is it not running because it's not supposed to run, or it's supposed to run, but it's not running? So in this case, we have a downtime which is immediately gets divided into two categories: expected, non-expected. And this is where the whole thing starts right there, because then you have a subject for manipulation under certain scenario where it can be manipulated, whether it's what it was expected, oh no, it wasn't expected, because this is directly going to impact the OEE
calculation.
number. Yep, OEE calculation. Now, what else they were saying? They were always saying like it's performance, not availability, and the answer is dead wrong. It's always availability and not performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
So
yeah.
in other
It's
words, machine performs reasonably well. It's not available to
yeah,
perform because there's a unexpected downtime. So the next question is, what are those unexpected downtimes?
right. Yeah, and Peter, it just seems like every customer also just wants to not calculate a quality at all. So they just have us
Well,
pulling.
if you only have inline quality, but remember we have that tricky thing.
Yeah,
You don't have inline quality. You can always throw the quality after the fact by just
right,
making the adjustments. And then
right,
once adjustments entries are done by the end of the shift, there you have your quality. Yeah, you won't see the, here we see the inline quality system, which in real time provides the rejects.
right. Yeah. Let's see. Hold on.
Yeah, if you wanted to look at the adjustments, there should be historian. Yeah, in the historian, you have the adjustment part where there
Oh
you
yeah.
go,
Adjust
adjust
OEE.
OEE, boom,
Yeah.
and there you can actually throw additional rejects, and you can actually see you can add scheduled maintenance, emergency maintenance, some shutdown and shutdown. I'm assuming that shutdown a little bit vague on this particular one. I think it's expected downtime.
Right.
So shutdown, it means it's been shut down for a reason and it's not supposed to run. So therefore, every time, all the time when it's in shutdown state, then OEE is not going to get impacted because you're not expecting it to run. Makes sense, right, Johnny?
Yep.
It's kind of, so this is where you get to that kind of interesting area. Hey, do you have a schedule? You don't have schedule. Do you know what your expectations are? And yeah, you get to this point, like then how you can measure reliably OEE if you don't have any reliable expectations? And that immediately throws the whole thing into utilization. You have a production equipment on the floor. You assume that it's supposed to run 24/7, and you measure it, and then you start messing around and saying, yeah, all right, well, it didn't run 24/7. It ran like half of it. How I'm gonna deal with the other half.
Right.
But we don't even interesting in this. See, we don't care about was it available, was it downtime. All we interesting is all our interest in this system is revolves around one thing and one thing only. We want to see it's running, and when it stopped running, we want to find out reliably what was the reason for machine to stop running.
Right.
We don't
Yep.
care what the results are. We want to see what's stopping it, and reliably finding out what exactly caused machine to stop,
Right.
why it stopped producing.
Right.
Everything else is secondary.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you almost
we don't even interesting in OEE and key performance indicators, etc. We're only interesting around one and one thing only. It runs, it stopped running. What was the reason?
Yeah, essentially, if you're only given the statistics of the states and just this graph right here, you almost don't need the OEE calculations because you're only interested in these, right? All right, so let's
Yeah,
talk about
technically, yeah. I'm only interested in reliable, uh, receiving reliably machine states
right,
or equipment states, and then figuring out using those states and the sequence of their appearance and transition from state to state. Because remember what you didn't say, Brent, we're looking here at the states that are mutually exclusive. In other words, if you have 100% of the time, all that 100% of the time is going to be divided in these states, whether they occurred or not. But the total sum of each state time will compute to the 100%.
right,
Now, obviously, you see occurrence too. It means like, hey, production took place for 8.5 hours almost, and it happened 11 times. It means the machine changed its state to production 11 times in a
right,
in a total running time. Total production time was 8.5 hours. Now you look at the
right,
faulted, you see the same thing there, that it faulted 8 times, and total time accumulated towards fault state was 1 hour 36, almost 37 minutes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the grayed out. That means those states did not take place, or they're not available on that particular equipment.
right.
Yeah, and let's not call it machine, let's call it equipment. Some
Yeah.
production equipment, because it's a more broader sense. But yeah, let's call it equipment.
All right. So say if you are a supervisor, right? And so you want to compare shift, the first shift versus the second shift, right? So you would go to the historian. We've picked the machine number 3, the filler. So we can go to compare shift. We can then pick actually, you know what? I'm going to go and pick the shift before it. So I'll select that. It takes a second here. And then what it's going to do is going to put it on the left-hand side versus the right-hand side. So you can start seeing that this was starved, this is faulted. You can see that this was faulted as well.
Uh,
You know,
yeah, right.
you,
So that's just side by side. 1 second, my battery is getting.
so then what you've got is you've got you can start seeing that how many times it faulted versus the other one. You can see what it produced versus the other one. So if you start seeing that the second shift is actually outproducing the first shift, you'll see that. You can always see that right here with the OEE calculations, and then you could scroll through. You can even see it historically farther out. So you'll start seeing a trend on first and second very quickly. All right, so let's go into the other problems. So that was a supervisor. He did the compare. Then you've got maintenance. So maintenance, what do they need? Well, they would probably need a couple of things. One is they can actually go to the historian and start seeing, looking at any of the OEE of where the performance is actually low. They can then go into the performance, I'm sorry, the root fault. And let's go into that. They can do the root fault of the machine on that shift, or they can see it
Yeah,
live and
but
then
again,
go,
you see, this is where I'm a little bit kind of not happy, because you're throwing the terminology, you're throwing things without even knowing. What is a root fault? What is
no, no, no.
production?
Peter,
Right.
actually, I got that on the next slide. So we'll talk about it.
All
I
right.
just
So
want to,
anyway, yeah, here we go. What we're looking. We're looking at the root fault. Is it live? Yeah. So we're looking at the live, assuming that this is, I mean, this is
it's,
simulation, right?
yeah, it's simulated.
Yeah, it's simulation. All right. So we're looking at some simulated equipment that is currently running a production shift. It's in production state, right? What we see on the right hand side, where it's selected the root faults, you see hourly distribution of faults for that specific machine. And you have a time that the line gets increased, and then you see the occurrences. Unfortunately, the kind of simulation is a bit evenly distributed.
Right,
But
right.
anyway, you see that the first hour was no downtime. There was no faults. I'm sorry. Second hour was 7 a.m. actually. Did hit several faults. I think it was one, and it was none, and then
Then it starts
occasional
increasing.
faults. Yeah, they're basically evenly distributed across the next 7 hours,
Right.
which is
So
not the best example here, but anyway, yeah,
yeah,
that's what this is where you start seeing, yeah, much better picture. There you go. See, here you have a case where you have some fault 8, and by the way, click on the hour and occurrence.
yeah.
Click
Okay,
anywhere. Yeah,
gotcha.
there we go.
Okay.
See, the click the to the tallest one. Yeah, there you go. See what it does. It tells you that during the 9th hour, well, 9 a.m. I'm sorry, would be what the 3rd hour. You see that there was a 4 faults totally were recorded, and those faults are caused machine to interrupt production, and they are, as you can see, one of them is fault 4 occurred. You have a timestamp on how long it took before the machine resumed production or either transitioned to another state. So what you literally start seeing here, you see the unexpected downtime during this particular hour of
Right.
shift, and what were the reasons why the machine interrupted production, and those specific reasons were has nothing to do with a human. So
Yeah.
that comes directly out of the native fault logic of that specific equipment. Yeah, it is
Yeah.
simulated here, but
Yeah, and let's talk about that. And by the way, the fault description, that could be, that's all custom. So
yeah,
I mean, this is a
usually they
simulated.
are they are taken from the PLC.
Right. All right, so let's go into what the root fault, because this is a big deal. All right, so say you have a piece of equipment and say you open the door, that obviously shuts down the equipment. Typically what happens on the HMI is you'll get flooded with a bunch of cascading a type of alarms. Imagine a plant with about 150 devices. All of the devices are plugged into the network. Your network is just going to get flooded with these alarm triggers. Well, depending on the type of system, your cloud solution would see all of these alarms unless there's some type of logic that's embedded into the PLC, because these alarms happen so fast. So really what you want is, instead of alarm list that happens, you want a root fault, which the root fault is the one that's actually responsible for the alarm, or responsible
Yeah,
for the downtime.
let me get this. Or you have the do you have the diagram of the
Yeah,
root
yep.
fault? Ah, okay.
So
Machine is, equipment is operating, it's making production, then production stops, and at this point the logic kicks in that trying to catch what is the first fault there on the moment, and it's actually looking for a I mean, it's configurable for a certain time frame to catch the fault. If it's not seeing fault, let's say within like half second or so, then it's going to say, I don't know, it's just unknown shutdown. Like there's no fault, the machine has just stopped. Now, here you see that the fault number 1 is observed. It immediately raises root fault with identity of fault 1 lower. Now the fault 2 comes subsequently, but it's no longer subject of interest because the first fault was already captured. And you may have what Brent said, cascading faults, because operators start going in, breaking light curtains, etc., etc. But you already don't care about this. You simply going and keep tracking of this particular fault that is now contributing to the downtime. Now watch this, the fault reset button is hit. It clears the fault, but the root fault sits there. It waits until the production either resumed or other state would be engaged. So in first case, we just simply have a scenario when the production gets resumed. Obviously, root fault gets cleared, production continues for a certain time. Then we have a second event of production being dropped. And then we start again here. We capture at this point fault 3. We ignore fault 2 because it came a little bit later. But interestingly enough, you see that emergency maintenance was called either its button or
And that gets superseded.
Yeah, it gets superseded because I guess you hear me fine?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I had to switch to the speaker. One second. Yeah, because the priority of the maintenance, emergency maintenance, is higher, and it supersedes the root fault. But now you have time to be contributed to the maintenance, and you see on the top of it that says orange, the top, like the ribbon. Yeah, right there. Then it followed by the shutdown, etc., etc. But that gives you a very good idea what the root faults are, and they are native to the equipment. So you operate native root faults. Imagine the outcome of it is a bunch of downtime that is absolutely unique, mutually exclusive, means non-conflicting with any other states and any other faults. And they showing you why machine keeps stopping. Why machine keeps stopping from a perspective of machine or equipment itself.
Right.
From the process. So that's why we call, if we're close to the process, we know everything about the process. If we're far from the process, we start seeing it becomes blurry and blurry and blurry.
It's the reason why solutions
like this
never get you to the truth, because you haven't installed anything into the PLC. You haven't learned about the process. You haven't added the root fault analysis logic to it. You'll never get to the root fault.
And so, let's emphasize measuring productivity. Well, productivity, I would say, measuring your throughput or equipment throughput is not OEE.
Right.
Yeah, OEE and measuring the how much product machine produced, and knowing general idea that downtime was that much without any specific. It's not OEE. It's kind of it's very vague interpretation of production statistics.
Yeah, but that word gets used more often though.
Well, because nobody knows how to properly get this.
Okay, so we've got root fault. We now understand about why we did what we did. Then there's the last one, the last user, which is going to be the OEE operator. There's a very good chance that he's going to have an interface that's going to show him how his shift is doing. I think it'd be wise to also show him how his last shift did. It might be just connected to a piece of equipment, or it might be he might be dealing with a whole line. So that would show them not only just per machine, but also per line. All right. And then
now you can actually share the statistics in terms of root faults and downtime associated with root faults with operator, and get his feedback on, like, hey, do you know why this is even happening? Because once you throw this data in front of the operator, they will start making sense out of it. They probably would be the number one resource to even try to get any idea why machine is acting in a certain way. Secondary,
Right.
of course, is going to be the maintenance, the the resources that are responsible for maintaining machine or recovering it. But usually, from what I see, operators are first line of maintenance, and then if they can't deal with this, they call it second line of maintenance.
Right.
Then those guys are dealing with. But giving them a very accurate measurements of what the downtime associated with the machine specific faults, it immediately gives them all the, all the instruments, all the reasons how to deal with it. Because they
Right.
cannot, literally, you cannot expect them to give it to you unless they see it. And you say, hey, this is how I'm collecting. Then they say, now I know.
Right. Yeah, Peter, I'm still convinced that the comparison is a really big deal, because you might have a line that actually doesn't really run all that well. And it's just because of the types of machines you have. But if you're seeing a certain operator operate a certain way compared to another shift, the same very exact same day.
Totally. Look, you're going to see this pattern left and right. Moreover, this is what I would call a fine-tuning instrument to get your to get the equipment to run the most optimum way. Like, remember what was that cosmetic thing, like the buffer issue? Johnny, they were going like what was that? They were going starved production, starved production, starved production.
Yeah.
The thing was the buffer, they had like an incoming buffer. Where they collect the containers
Bottle.
to fill them, right? And the machine and the rate that was coming in, it was inconsistent. They would like come in chunks, then it kind of stays off for a while. It does not feed the machine. And they were constantly running on a low buffer, and it caused machine to go like production, then starve, production, starve. And it was like thousands and thousands, like hundreds of thousands, those transition during the shift. So what it took simply increase the buffer. So before the machine will signal upstream machine to saying like, hey, send me less. So it's like, no, send me more. I will have more, because that's so infrequently. That thing immediately took it to the next level. But look, operator has no clue.
Right.
Like they look at this, they don't understand why. They don't know that there is a connection between the filler machine and the machine that sends the bottles to fill, and that then the buffer is involved as well.
That's the funny part about showing plants OEE for the first time. And Peter, we've seen this happen all the time. But the first week that they actually see really good data, they realize like huge, massive faults, huge issues. And mostly it's availability, of course, but then it's also how they have the line set up. So, yep.
So you're getting close, or you want to?
Yeah. Give me just a few more slides, and then we can go back. All right. So there's 6 common OEE issues, and let's go through a few of these here. Of course, there's more than 6, but we're just going to go through the common ones that we can recall right here at the moment. So one of them is the unconditional disagreements. Peter, me and you have been through several different meetings, but I mean, even if we utter the words of how OEE is calculated, we already have started an argument at that already. And who manages this, manages the OEE and how it's calculated. Anyway, let me go to the next one. Then there's no common OEE definitions or terminology. So none of this is written down on a piece of paper that we can have an argument or a discussion on. So even within the same organization, they'll have different people that have different opinions. Usually it takes a while and a lot of patience to get through these very 2 right here. So then we've got the toxic and extremely political aspect of it. A lot of these plants, we find that there's a KPI that's already that the
they're always going to have something, yeah.
Yeah, a KPI. Plant managers will normally be tracked by some kind of KPI calculation. And as soon as they realize that this will be telling the real truth, it they'll have to renegotiate how their KPIs are handled or set up. Ideally, the operators will be then set up with some type of promotion or some type of KPI. So, if they meet target rates and that kind of stuff, so they can perform better. Anyway, let's see. Go to the next one. Then there's the hidden interest. So there's a lot of as soon as we start having these conversations, we'll start having people that have already hunkered down to certain types of solution or software, and only wanting to use certain architectures. Then there's the lack of flexibility and technical knowledge, and again, not willing to learn different technologies and different software solutions. So that's another issue that we've come across. This one hurts me the most. It's when they start tracking the OEE. Oops, sorry guys. And they get provided some type of OEE solution, and then what happens is that they don't hire any more staff to start looking at and analyzing the data. They don't hire any more maintenance people to start tracking down the problem. They assume that any type of OEE solution is going to minimize and save hours and save time. And a lot of times what happens is that nobody looks at this data after it's been implemented. So to me, this is the problem where when given a Fitbit and you're starting to collect or make data, you're starting to analyze and look at that data, but that doesn't necessarily allow you to lose weight.
My Fitbit will not get you automatically weight loss.
That's right. And neither will OEE.
I'll give you a pretty data though.
Right. So real quick, if you are going to go into the OEE, of course this is stepping into the OEE. It's one of the worst subjects that automation people have to talk about.
You sure about
usually
that?
Say what?
So are you sure that's the worst subject?
Oh yeah, it is.
Definitely. If there's one thing that will make automation people the most upset, this is just talk about OEE and how to calculate it and how to do it and that kind of stuff. What Johnny? What's your thoughts? So what would be your worst thought?
I mean, it seems
Subject.
like it's more like listening to y'all talk about this. It's more of nobody truly understanding their business to begin with, and then
I understand some aspects of it, but
yeah, like they don't understand. They look at it as I have this machine. It's gonna do X, and they don't understand that there's the maintenance side. There's the bringing it all together. They don't understand that how an OEE system. One of the things that I bring up is how can, if I invest $1 million into an OEE system into my factory, what should that, if I follow Peter's guidelines 100% to a T, what should that do for me? How is that going to affect my bottom line? Is it going to be, it's going to hurt for a little while because I'm going to have to spend some money, things like that. But the overall,
it's going to hurt as hell, for sure. Especially in case of you operating already, let's say, well-established business.
Mhm.
If it's been running it means it already has those issues that are integral parts, and they're being they're not dealt with. They just they covered by a invisible shroud, and you want to what we're ultimately after. We want to remove this invisible shroud,
Mhm.
and we're going to say, this is what needs to be dealt with.
Correct.
Take a look at this. Have you even thought that there's things like that? Of course they don't, and that's why we're saying it's a political. But yeah, you're right. It's going to hurt as hell in the beginning.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And here I'll give you this, and this is for everybody listening on or watching. If you are going to go ahead and start,
Yeah,
yeah,
Hey,
we,
I think those have been made.
Oh yeah,
we
yeah.
don't.
They are.
So and I like the statement on this is that you shouldn't be looking for an MES solution. You should be looking for the features inside of an MES solution. What is hurting the most, so you can actually solve those problems first. Do not go after a solution and try to solve all of your problems all at one go. Ideally, what you need to try to do is not a waterfall type of architecture. You need to do an agile methodology. Get feedback from the actual integrator on what is being built, what types of problems you guys are having. Get a very, very custom, unique solution provided. To me, in my opinion, is that, and this goes along with a lot of other people, but an MES solution cannot be just a solution or product that just drops in. It's got to be a custom one. Every single unique plant is very unique. It can't be just a product. All right, so and we went really quick over it, so I do want to kind of dive into it. But a lot of SCADA system OEE solutions are like this, but you will plug in the different types of PLCs into a SCADA server. You'll have the OEE engine sitting. Well, you can have the OEE engine as an ignition. You can also embed quite a bit of the calculations inside of SQL. You need the OE tools, you need the reports, and depending on who the users are and what types of problems they're trying to solve, you'll have a wide variety of different solutions for that. Peter, I know that you want to go through this one.
Yeah, that's just you're looking at the chaos or zoo on the left, and you're looking at all very well defined, very well integrated on the right. That's the pink to greenish arrow.
Right.
And this is where the magic happened. Magic happened not in tier 3, where it usually does, or tier 4. Typically tier 4, if we're talking about like some cloud-based solutions. The magic happened in tier 1, which is automation controller. By directly interacting with the program that controls the process, extracting relevant events, dealing with the native fault logic, and producing standard integration interface for integration with the higher tier. Now, no matter how many machines you have, how many equipment do you have, they're all going to integrate standardly, in a standard way. All these things that pass tier 2, they're going to be identical. Now, it's not sensitive to a latency on the network because everything gets buffered and it's stored accordingly. So
Right.
network is not an issue. So in other words, you're not going to get an error on the sequence of events. It's going to be reflecting an absolute truth of how the process behaved. Now, where you typically start, like for recommendations for some business owner or managers, higher tier managers deciding on the OEE solutions or deciding how to measure effectively their KPI. This is where you start. One moment.
Do you want to share your screen, Peter?
I'm trying to share a screen, but I'm thinking, all right, hold on. Okay, I'll share the screen. And I'll do this. You tell me if this is reasonable enough. You can see it, okay, right?
Yes.
All right, this is where you start. You identify the states, equipment states that you want to deal with. Here's a simple diagram that allows you to kind of deal with this. The one that are marked with stars, those are mandatory states. It means that's a minimum requirement that you want to have. And those are production, machine is not available, idle, and faulted. This is imply actually, well, we're not going to expand it further, but that's basically a foundation for the root fault. And now, as you can see, this is how it descends. It's a constant cycle going and deciding whether it's productive. If it's productive, obviously it kicks in the production state. If it's not, then it says, hey, it's downtime. And then we're going to go through the procedure of figuring out whether expected or not. Let's go simple flow here. It's expected. Is a changeover. If it's a changeover, we're going to kick in changeover, although it may be optional. If it's not, then we're figuring out whether it's available or not. Now, availability is a tricky thing because in some scenario, operator would be given an option to put machine into not available mode. And we saw this, Brent, and that famous cosmetic things where they were immediately running to hit that not available button because they know they put it in not available, their production is, their rate is not impacted. They just immediately call it not available. Now, if it's not available, then you're trying to figure out whether there's maintenance or it's true not available, or if it's available, then you have either emergency maintenance or then you try to decide whether it's start, block, or idle. Now, all these are mutually exclusive faults, not that the, mutually exclusive states. And know that the exit of it is going to be only one state at a time with associated event counter and associated time that is that state contributed to that particular equipment. Now, obviously, for a different type of production, that may be slightly different, but this is where you generally start. And you can see I have here things called automatic decision, manual or automatic decision. That means that enables operator to intervene, and that's where your typical what they call it, the manual option or reason codes or operator called states are going to be involved. The operator can call it from here. And then you have a pure maintenance decisions, like the machine cannot put itself into changeover. It cannot automatically put itself into a maintenance or preventive maintenance. Neither can do an emergency maintenance. These are all operator decisions. Makes sense, right?
Yep.
Now, next thing, here's another good example. This is actually I would say 23-year-old diagram. And that's where you have a states that I get translated through this logic, and then it kicks machine time, and then you have a mutually exclusive. But at this particular case, what you'll see, you cannot, like if you would call that machine is exclusively in a particular state, it does not necessarily mean that other activities are not happening there, because you can actually may have a changeover and emergency maintenance going at the same time. Now, all the resources there, they are going to be fighting for this top pie chart, but it doesn't mean that behind the scene they are not credited. If you want to take to the very next level, this is how you do it. Because remember, these are all events as they were happening from their own event perspective, but only some of them actually, some of their time reach the top. Obviously, production will override or supersede everything or shut down, but everything else behind the scene is not. And you can see how I showing what the maintenance look like. This is what the changeover case, and like here's another case for the shutdown, what it might look like, and different kind of flavors of the shutdowns, etc. You kind of got the idea, right?
Peter, I was using Windows XP about 20 years ago. I don't know what software you're using for this diagram, but
This
it looks good.
This is Visio, and obviously this is where you're going to end up. This document is imperative. So somebody has to start putting this all together, define those states, define what these states are actually, what they mean. And see here, I'm going through the precisely what actual interpretation. When I call it a state, I describe what state is.
Guaranteed document to put you to sleep.
Yeah,
But if
but that's what behind this. So writing this document does not require to have an OEE solution, but it puts you into a position where you can start actually putting your wishes and desires of how you want to deal with the with this particular case. Like how Walker say it, like tell us your wishes. You're
Right.
granted. Well, these are the wishes. But why
Right.
I have to wish every time for somebody who claims they have all the experience in the world by running plant for 20 years or whatever? Then tell me,
Right.
write the freaking document.
So Johnny, a lot of times, how do I describe this? If somebody wants here, let me share my screen here.
Yeah, by the way, Johnny, all you saw there, I mean, you see the results, or you see right now fruits of 25 years of escapade with OEE.
well, it's
And it was on for me and off, on and off. And yeah, it's literally like going through the survival.
it's like
Uh,
bookkeeping. It's how do
Worse,
you keep your
worse than that.
books? And
Right.
at least with bookkeeping, you have an accountant, and they're gonna keep things right and straight and tell you your cash flow, your AR, your AP, rada rada.
Right.
Whereas this, you have not.
Well, it's pretty much you kind of good you gave good analogy. This is your bookkeeping for the for the production performance. How the production is performing.
And the biggest thing that I see, even from like the plants that I go into, is, and the machine builders that I work for, they nobody thinks about this up front. Nobody, no machine. Maybe a few machines that I've seen have like what mode it's in. You'll see stuff like that, but most of the time it's just they found the cheapest person to write the PLC program to run that machine, and that's it.
And they just go run it, or typically they will run it in shop. Then they will go to the production, deploy it, do the what was it called, 20/80 rule. So you to 80% spend writing 20% of the program, and then they do the startup. And the startup is basically where the whole thing is happened. Now we're speaking about optimization here. So optimization is the answer. Like putting into the rather like making a joke. What's the ultimate? We want to know the answer. Remember that, Brent? This.
Yeah. It's
Well,
yeah.
we want to know the answer. Should be simple. Well, there we go. The answer is optimization. That's the only answer.
Right. Here, let me finish up with the few slides, and we can start chatting a little bit. Yep. So bottom line is you need to grab the states and the root faults from the individual process, throw that into an OEE solution. We'll talk about this in a second. Obviously, we've got a raw automation podcast. Go ahead and like and subscribe. Real quick, Peter and Johnny, this is the SAP solution for OE. They show you the OE number, the availability performance. They've got the top losses right here. They'll have the availability losses right here. But it's lacking all the other tools. So you can't do comparison, or it's not showing that you can do comparison. So this is their solution. 1 second here. Peter, you're gonna like this. A truer OE number. So this is one of the standard type of products where you're plugging into it. it's giving you a little bit of the data, but the reason codes are
Yeah,
automatic or not
it's one
automatic.
of those you call, let me be honest. Well,
Yeah,
you were
correct.
not honest before, you're just becoming honest at this particular moment, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Let me give you the truth, right? Or before it wasn't.
right, right. So maybe we can talk about this. All of these pieces of equipment will have some type of HMI. A lot of times you'll already have a SCADA system involved because to feed this line, you've got to set up whether you need setting up the whip tank to feed the product into the production line. So you've already got some type of SCADA system that's scattered around the plant. You could obviously just add the MES layer to it. So then therefore you're not adding another additional PC to the production floor. So my issue is that you can't scale this out if all of a sudden we're adding all three of these user interfaces trying to communicate with each other. So I would rather, if in the dream world, I would rather just have these two different systems, and that would be all the operator would interface with. In fact, I'd even take it a step farther and eliminate the HMI, and
Yeah,
you would SCADA
totally.
system that would interface.
Managing HMIs, hardware specific HMIs, and let's be very direct here. Let's say that we, in this particular case, we're referring to Allen Bradley HMI. Managing Allen Bradley HMI, their programs, I don't want to do that. It's too
Right.
much. Thank you very
Right.
much. I'd rather have a ignition talking to the PLC and getting the best of the two.
Right.
Well, but you got to understand, probably when they buy that machine, they're, you know, the
Look,
machine has to be able to run
they
without.
it had it along
Yeah.
with that. Well, my answer to this very simple: to the machine builders, start putting the ignition. And I don't know if they have a machine edition, but I think they do. They might have a machine edition or something
Yeah,
like
they
that.
add.
Yeah. Start using some sort of IPC as their
Exactly.
HMI, and they can run their factory talk machine edition, and then whenever someone like y'all comes in, you can just load ignition on it and be done with it.
Because
Right.
I mean, I've seen it left and right with those teeny HMIs and the operator running left and right. Then he does one thing at one corner, then he runs to another station, he clicks there, where in fact he spends like 90% of his time in one particular area. Well, give them the fully integrated things on let's say an ignition in one spot. You want separated? We'll separate it, just a computer.
Yeah.
I mean, the cost of the computer is right now nowhere. I mean, probably the cheapest HMI will only get to the price of the typical PC.
Right.
Not to
Yeah.
mention that we can actually have the iPads or similar devices,
Right.
touchpads.
Yeah, because what is a panel view?
I
A
just
12-inch or a 15-inch panel view is that 3,000 to 5,000?
I just bought two 10-inch, panel view pluses, and they were about $3,500 a pop.
So just a 27, or I'm sorry, a 24-inch touchscreen PC is roughly around the range of like 1,800 or 2,000. Then you throw on some type of software that can be managed
Oh, if
centrally.
it's one, it doesn't make any sense. But yeah, if you have a multiple, it does make sense.
Right.
Yeah, of course, the that cost efficiency here based on volume a
Right.
little bit, but one probably may not be efficient enough.
Yep.
But
So
anyway, yeah, go ahead.
I would say, Johnny, what we found in the past is, say we come to a customer and they want a SCADA system. We find their requirements fairly easy to deal with. You're wanting, line status, blah, 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 some process, some tank farms, some mixing operations, some alarms. Seems like SCADA systems are just easy to implement, some reports. But as soon as we talk about any type of MES, definitely OEE, that's when we start slowing down. There's a lot more meetings. Instead of at least, on average, maybe a SCADA solution might have like 5 different meetings, and we can start producing a lot of different mock-ups and whatnot. OEE seems like it's in person, some arguments, at least a minimum of 10 to 15 types of meetings with different departments and different thoughts, and it just seems a lot slower to implement.
It, and that probably comes more because you're dealing with corporate level people, and you're bringing technology to corporate level personnel, and at the end of the day, they're looking at dollars and cents. They don't care too much about the flashy screens and this and that, because it seems more like the OEE is really more for mid-level management. It's great to go to the corporate level, but I can tell you that someone on the corporate level could give 2 shits about the reason code for why the machine was down. But maybe the mid-level management, you know, he's going to be wanting to know why the machine was down, who was running it. And then there's also another piece of it, as we were talking about all this, there's you can't run a business from the bottom up. So that the barcode scanner or the reason codes, or, you know, if there is any sort of input into this system from a user, there has to be the mentality from the top down that it's important that they do it correctly. If they don't want to worry about that, then move it out of the way and don't make that part of the problem. And training with personnel as well that needs to be done. Those are the things that I see are the biggest hurdles from just listening to y'all. I don't know. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a couple of we bumped heads with a couple of customers, and you know, we're a great fit for some. For others, you know, like a good example is we've had one customer that just wanted to connect to our database. We had Ignition, and they were convinced that they can clean up all the data and bring it to a dashboard. But it doesn't work. We just don't, you know, they're making the assumption that we've got the data that's clean and contextualized, and then they know what to do with it. And it's not accurate, right? So we've had this in the past, but corporate would all of a sudden communicate, or some kind of sales guy. Like I said, the sales guys are really heavy in these 2 areas, but they'll sell that they can, you know, capture all this great data out on the production floor at scale fairly quickly. So that sells really, really well to corporate, and so they'll start pushing those types
because
of
they don't see any dependencies. They
Right.
see it's a clear, straight shot. Well, good, but you only have a glimpse.
Yeah,
Right.
They're already in SAP every day, doing, you know, whatever they need to do in SAP. So just clicking over to see what's going on for OEE, it makes their life easy.
Right.
You
Another
can,
issue.
if you're looking at SAP, you could technically get some OEE meaning out of SAP.
Oh,
yeah, it would be delayed. It would be delayed. You could get kind of afterwards. But we're not talking about here just getting general idea of where the performance or where the manufacturing is in terms of performance.
Well, for a corporate level manager of a plant, he's not going to be looking at live data. He might look at and say, "Hey, how'd the plant run yesterday?" That's probably really all he cares about.
Yeah, for them it may be just to compare.
Yeah.
You know, today it was bad. Today it's better. Tomorrow probably bad again, or maybe better.
Yeah.
Well, again, remember what I said. We are here, or what we showing, what we did show you. The solution is oriented, designed to do one thing: to show why production was interrupted, give it a straight, objective answer based on the process, on the control of the process perspective, the controller, and that enable the optimization.
And that's what this type of system should do. Is
Precisely.
it's If it doesn't help you do anything, you might as well go burn thousands of dollars. You'd get more out of it.
Well, what I would say, just get another equipment. Get a newer model of iPhone. Whatever.
Yeah, I did forget about this, but you do have to put in your different products, and then you do have to type in your machines, and sometimes it's actually based on rate or totalizing. Anyway, so then you'll see the differences between the product and the machine. You can see that there's different units, and then that is all logged. So as soon as you make those changes, you'll start seeing that there's a log who made those changes and what did they make those
All right.
to. Sorry.
Guys, well,
Yep.
I'm getting tired. I hope Johnny, we entertain you a little bit.
Oh, it's always entertaining when you're around.
All right, so let me end it, Peter. Well,
Okay.
thanks for watching. I appreciate if you have any kind of questions, or you have some comments that you would like. We're again not hurt by any means. If you have any thoughts or suggestions for us, find us on LinkedIn, and we'll go from there. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.